Hello. So this is it. This is the last lesson of the 2019-2020 school year. It was really kind of gloomy in my room today and I was looking all pale. So I decided, y'all always know that something's up when Miss Harris puts on makeup. So I decided to put on a little makeup today for this last lesson. Maybe I'll do a lesson over the summer if someone asks for it besides just the people that are joking with me on Facebook, I will totally do it. Why not? Anyway, so today we're going to talk about genetics. And the reason why we're talking about this in the 8th grade when it isn't really on the curriculum for 8th grade is because there is so much that's in the 7th grade curriculum that a lot of times the 7th grade teachers do not get a chance to talk about mitosis, meiosis, and genetics with you when you're 7th graders. And so very often they ask me to talk about it in the 8th grade. I didn't get a chance to talk about mitosis or meiosis, and I apologize to your future biology teachers for that. But at least I can give you a little foot into genetics and not run past our deadline or overwhelm you. So just a basic introduction to genetics and the reason why I wrote the things up here that I wrote. Well, first, let's start with what that is. So that's a drawing of the same thing, but DNA, we talked about it in class. You talked about it last year in life science, and say it with me. It stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And that is what makes you, your individual DNA code, the individual way that your acids come together, the way that your bases and sugars and acids come together, are what make you different than everyone else. This is also a representation of DNA, and the ATGC represents those chemicals that come together in pairs to code and match up and make the individual codes that make you and code for what you look like and how tall you are and all those things. Adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine is what those stand for. And I know that your life science teachers got a chance to talk about DNA and the codes. What they didn't get a chance to talk about was the stuff that's down here. Now, we did talk about gametes in class. That was the word that I told you we were going to have a super cringy conversation, and you were never going to forget what gamete meant because it would come across on a question that you know darn well what the answer is. But because you don't know what a gamete is, you don't get it right. So, again, say it with me. Gametes are reproductive cells. That's right. A sperm or an egg are gametes. And gametes have to do with genetics because that is where the code that makes you comes from. Half of the genes come from mom and half of the genes come from dad. Now, what makes that interesting is you end up with 2 codes for everything. Well, almost everything. There are some exceptions, but on the 23rd pair, the one that defines whether you're a female or a male, that X and Y, if you don't have that leg, if you're a boy and you're missing that leg, anything that's coded for, well, here, I'll draw it. What's the point of having a whiteboard if you can't draw it? Can y'all see right here? Yes. All right, so you got XY if you're a boy and XX if you're a girl. So there are things that are coded for on that leg that since that leg isn't there, if you're a boy and you get the code for, let's say baldness, because that's the one that usually we end up talking about. The code for baldness is carried on the female gene, on the X chromosome. So you get whether or not you're going to be bald from your mother. So very often, if your mother's father is bald, you are going to be bald, very, very likely, because that code is going to come from her. And then because you don't get that leg from dad, because you only get a Y from dad, that means that right there is the code you've got. So sorry for that if that broke someone's heart because your mom's dad is bald. But you know what? Bald is beautiful and it's okay. So You get these two codes from your parents, and whichever code is more dominant, so that's another word I should have written in here, dominant. Whichever code is more dominant is the one that shows itself. So if I said a team dominated on the field, well, what does that mean? Dominate, right? Like stand over. Dominate is the thing that goes over top and makes something happen. Then the other gene is recessive. What does it mean if something recesses? When you recess, you go outside and take a break. When court goes to recess, take a break. To recess is to go away, to recess into the crevice, to back away. So the recessive gene is the one that hides, the one that isn't seen. Now it's still there in your DNA. It's still there in your code. It's still there for you to pass it on to your children. So you could end up having something happen like what happened with me and my husband. So this is up here. This is called a Punnett square. Oh, you know what? How did we find this out? We found this out because of Gregor Mendel. Okay, I even wrote this stuff up here to help me out, and I didn't anyway. Gregor Mendel was a monk, and he is considered to be the father of genetics. He is the man who figured out that there was a relationship between what traits the parent showed and what traits the offspring showed. And he is the one who figured out that you could control those traits and you could breed for certain things. He is the one who figured all of that out. How did he do that? He was the gardener. He lived in a monastery. He was a monk, and he was the gardener. He was the one who made sure there was enough food for everybody to eat. The cat just came in. He was the one who, made sure there were all the food crops planted, and he grew a lot of peas. Peas grew very well in the place where he lived. And he's the one that figured out that pea plants' dominant traits are to be tall and to have white flowers, yellow flowers. I don't remember which one was dominant. I think yellow flowers was dominant. And that green peas were dominant, but you could have yellow. That was recessive. Short plants was also recessive. Then you could have you'd have where the flowers were on the axial, on the very end of the plant, or on the sides. I don't remember which one of those was dominant. Wrinkled pea pods versus puffed up pea pods, and puffed up ones were dominant. Wrinkled peas versus puffed up peas and puffed up. So he figured all of that out, that there were all these traits. He crossed parents and figured these things out. And he figured out a way to predict what the offspring are going to look like. If you know the code of the parents, you can predict the offspring. Now, we have these two things called genotype and phenotype. The genotype is the type of the genes. What do the genes look like? What's the code that the person has? And then you have phenotype. The phenotype is what does it look like? What type does it appear to be? The phenotype. So the phenotype is only going to be the dominant trait. So you could have a person that has a code for both the dominant and the recessive trait. So their genotype is going to be blended or heterozygous or hybrid. And they're going to have a code that's capital to represent their dominant and a code letter that's lowercase to represent the recessive. And it means that they have both. Their phenotype, however, is going to show just the dominant trait. Even though they carry the recessive trait in their genes, the dominant trait is not there anymore, or it's not seen. You also can have homozygous. Hetero meaning different, homo meaning same. And if you think about it, you know those two words because you have heard of other words that use those prefixes that means different and same. Right. So a homozygous genotype means that you have two recessive codes or two dominant codes, but they're identical. They're the same, homo. And that's the genotype. And for the phenotype, it's going to look whatever it codes for. If it's the dominant trait, it's going to look like the dominant trait. If it's recessive trait, it's going to look like the recessive trait. So let's talk a minute. Let's go back to where I got off track. So this thing is called a Punnett square, and it's what Mendel used to predict what the parents were going to look like when he had these pea plants and he wanted to figure out what the offspring were going to be. So what you do is you have to know the code of the parents, and you put the code for one parent across the top and put the code for the other parent along the side. And then in each of these boxes, it'll tell you a 1 in 4 chance of what the child will look like. So my father has blue eyes. Blue is the recessive trait. So to have blue, it has to be 2 lowercase b's is how it's represented very often in eye color. And that's the only way it can be, because if there's any other code there besides 2 lowercase b's, if it's coding for anything else, it's not going to be blue eyes. So blue eyes is the recessive trait. So my dad has blue eyes. Both of his parents had blue eyes. He has blue eyes. Okay. My mother has hazel eyes. So when I was born, my only option was to have hazel eyes. But in my genes, my genotype is big B, little b, because I'm carrying that blue code from my dad. My husband's the same way, except for brown instead of hazel. His mother has brown eyes, 100% Italian, but his dad had blue eyes. So again, his dad has this code, but he has this code, just like me, big B, little b. So we both appear, our phenotype is I have hazel eyes, he has brown eyes. Both of those are often coded with the capital B because hazel and brown and green are all kind of the same sort of. You can get more specific with this if you want later on in biology, but this is for the basics for now. Anyway, so when we first found out that we were pregnant with our first child, we decided we didn't want to know boy or girl. We said there's very few surprises that you get in this life, and so we didn't want to know. So we did not know that Kenny was going to be a boy until he arrived in the world. But we also, of course, didn't know what color the eyes were going to be. And so we, being the geneticist, I wanted to figure it out. So I did a Punnett square. And so what you do is put one parent along the side and one parent along the top. And then each of these represents a possibility of offspring. So you bring down the capital B here from that parent, and you bring over the capital B here from that parent. So that child has a genotype of both dominant. So that child is probably going to have brown eyes, and it doesn't even have the code for blue. So it can't even pass the code on to its children for blue eyes. Now in this one, we've got a capital B, but here we bring down the lowercase b. And that same thing happens for this box. We bring down the capital B and we bring over the lowercase. We have these, the genotype here is big B, little b. So it's heterozygous. So the appearance will be hazel or brown, but that blue code will be in the genes. And that's 2 out of the 3 children. Now the phenotype is going to be either hazel or brown, probably brown. So you have 3 chances here of having a brown-eyed child. But look at this. Little b, little b. Because both of our fathers had blue eyes and gave us that trait in our genes, where we were carrying it in our genes. Doesn't show, but we have it in our genes. We were able to pass that code on to our child. And Kenny, sure enough, was born with blue eyes. There was a 1 in 4 chance of Kenny having blue eyes, and he did. So really, genetics is a most interesting thing, especially when you're getting ready to have your own child and you want to figure out what all can happen. Genetics are weird. That 1 in 4 chance can happen more often than it seems like it really should. But anyway, now that we've had a chance to have a little chat in our little mini lesson, let's look at the stuff that I posted on Google Classroom. See you in a second. first thing I shared was the lesson. It was called Interactive Slides Genetics. And it is about just a longer version of what I talked about in the video. So the second slide is some things that you can click on to take a trait survey and to watch a TED Ed lesson about immortal cells, and feel free to follow those and get a little more information. Then the next slide is a place where you're going to predict which traits you think are dominant and which traits you think are recessive from your traits survey. Then here you can read watch a TED Ed about Gregor Mendel. So the man that I told you about, the monk who was the father of genetics. There's a TED Ed about him, a TED Talk about him as well. Here's just a quotation. You are 99.9% the same as the person next to you. The 0.1% difference in our DNA, although a small percentage, has created the vast differences in the human population so that no two people are exactly the same. All right, except for twins, identical twins. Okay, so genotype versus phenotype. We talked about this in the lesson. Genotype is what the genes look like. Phenotype is what is the physical appearance of the organism. The video here is a video, again, you can watch to learn about sex-linked traits. And we also talked about Punnett squares in the lesson. So this is just a quick review of that. So slide 8 is really the first one where we're going to do something together. So we have the parent from here, and the parent from here gives us big B, little b. In this box here, we have little b, little b. Here we have big B, little b. And here we have little b, little b. What percent of the offspring could have white fur? So white is the recessive trait. And we can tell that because the two lowercase b's here give us a white mouse. So two lowercase b's, half of them, 50% of the mice could have white fur. Next slide, slide 9 is a little more Punnett square practice. So we want to figure out the predicted percentage of children that have dimples. So the dominant allele is dimple, is a capital D for dimples, and the lowercase d means no dimples. So here we have a child with dimples, again, a child with dimples, again, a child with dimples, and here's the only one, two lowercase d's, no dimples. So percent of the offspring with dimples is 75%. All right, in this one, we've got dimples, dimples. Oh, little for this one, and little for this one. So only 50% of the offspring have dimples in that one. And here we've got dimples, 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 and dimples. Everybody's got dimples. Yes, there's hetero and homozygous options, but they all show having dimples. All right, the next one. This is a sex-linked trait. So this is one where, like I was talking about with baldness, where it is coded by the, and this one's about baldness. It's coded by the X and Y. So here in this one, we have a girl, and she is heterozygous. So if she has a daughter, her daughter will get either one of those, and her son will get either one of those. So in this case, you could not guarantee that that woman's son would be bald, because it would be possible for her to pass on the capital B to her son. So that's the one where it's possible. Like I said, it's not always true, but pretty much if mom's dad is bald, then it's a good sign, and you're a boy. Anyway, moving on. So here we've got not bald and boy. So this, God bless him, he's not going to be bald. All right, and here we've got another girl who is heterozygous for the trait. So again, she could pass the trait on to her son or not. And this one, he is not bald, so didn't he get lucky? All right, so we have two girls and two boys. And they all, two girls, two boys. The girls, hetero for baldness. Boys are not bald. I'm not going to clean that up any more than that. All right, and we talked through all those, so I'm not going to type them in. All right, moving on to the next slide. This one again has videos that you can watch about genes versus DNA versus chromosomes, and that should be something that's a review of what you learned in the 7th grade. Then this is about a model of a chromosome. I am not asking you to create a 3D model of a chromosome. If you want to, you go right ahead. I am not going to be asking you to make a model or do any of the rest of these slides on these questions. I've got the Dragon Genetics project that I'm going to have you do to show me that you understood what we were doing in this lesson. So now that we've talked a little bit about genetics and we've gone through those slides, now it's time for the Dragon Genetics Challenge. So come along with me to those Google slides and we'll see what kind of a dragon we can make. So here is the Dragon Challenge. So you are given two dragons. Xena is the mother and Zorus is the dad. And you can see what their codes are, what their genotypes are by looking over here. To the left in pink and to the right in blue for each of the parents. And then you can see what the phenotypes are by looking at their actual bodies. So if you scroll down to the 4th slide, it tells you what all those codes are. So capital G means green body, lowercase g means gray, etc., etc. So you're going to take that information, what we know from this first slide, and we're going to plug it into the Punnett squares on the 3rd slide so that we can create our offspring and see what the baby's going to be. So we know that the mother's name is Xena, and we know the father's name is Zorus. Now, I'm going to wait to name the offspring until I know whether it's a male or a female. So that'll be the last thing that I do is figure that out, if it's a male or a female, and then I'll name it. So the first thing we need is body color. So if we go back to the first slide, body color for Xena, she is gray. And since gray is the recessive trait, she has to have two G's, two lowercase g's for her code. So here on the side in the pink where the mom goes, we're going to put two lowercase g's. And dad's body color is two capitals. So yes, he is green, but his genotype could have been big G, little g. He could carry the recessive code, but he does not. So for body color, it's going to be capital G and capital G. For neck, Xena has lowercase n, so she has a short neck. So, oops, wrong thing. So lowercase n, lowercase n. And Zorus has also a short neck, two lowercase n's. For tail length, Xena is big T, little t, so she has a long tail. And she carries the code for a short tail, and so does dad. They both have that heterozygous code. So capital lowercase, capital lowercase. All right, eye color. For mom, eye color is capital E, lowercase e. So she has red eyes. And Zorus, the dad, is two lowercase e's. So he has white eyes. So mom is capital. And wasn't she homozygous capital? Nope, she was heterozygous capital. Glad I went back and looked. And he was lowercase for both. All right, wing color. Capital W, red. And okay, so they're both homozygous. She's homozygous dominant. He's homozygous recessive, red and yellow. So capital W is for mom and lowercase w is for dad. Capital, capital, lowercase, lowercase. All right, the horn. They both are heterozygous for their horn. So they both have, I believe, either one horn or no horns are the options. No horn is the option. Anyway, they both are heterozygous for the trait. Capital, lowercase, lowercase. Tail spike. All right, so whether or not there's a spike on the tail. They, let's see, mom has heterozygous for the trait, so she has it, and dad is recessive homozygous, so he does not have it. So mom was capital, lowercase, and dad was two lowercases. All right, claws. Mom is they both are heterozygous for claws. Capital C, lowercase c, capital lowercase. Fire breathing. Mom's a fire breather, dad's not, but she is heterozygous for that trait. He is recessive, does not breathe fire. That's got to be bad for a dragon, not breathing fire. So she's heterozygous fire breather, and he is not a fire breather. And then, of course, male, female, we know that he's a boy and she's a girl. I'm assuming they used that, didn't they? Yes, they did. All right. So now we need to do the Punnett squares to figure out what the different possibilities are. So you bring down the letter from this one and bring over the letter from this one. So let's do this first one together, and then after that, I'm going to do the rest of them off screen. So this would be capital G from dad, lowercase from mom. Here we've got capital from dad and lowercase from mom. Here we've got capital from dad and lowercase from mom. And here we've got capital from dad and lowercase from mom. As the capital G comes down from there into each of those boxes, and the lowercase g comes from over to each of those. All right, I'm going to do the rest of these off screen. When you come back, you'll be able to check your answers. I'm going to do the rest of these off screen. When you come back, just pause it and check your answers. All right. Okay, so I finished filling in all of the Punnett squares, and yours should be exactly the same as mine because we have exactly the same parents. So far, everything, if you're doing it correctly, should be the same. Now, here in a minute, I'm going to do something to randomize things and change stuff up, and you're going to do the same thing. And so your answers may be different from here on out. Some things I want you to pay attention to. For neck length, there was nothing for the parents to give but lowercase n's. So there's nothing for the children to have but lowercase n's. Whenever, and you notice whenever the parent had, homozygous here, you're going to get heterozygous for the children. Same thing happened here for wings. Nothing but heterozygous for the children. Whenever you cross a heterozygous with a heterozygous, you're going to get 75% of the phenotype of the dominant trait and 25% of the recessive trait. You're going to have one that's homozygous for the dominant trait and two that are heterozygous for the dominant trait every single time if the parents are heterozygous. That is the way it works out. So now to figure out what your baby is going to look like, of course, you have 4 chances. So you don't know which one it's going to be. So we're going to pull up a spinner. So if you go into Google and just search spinner, Google has a little spinner app, and you can tell it how many you want it to be and whatever. So we're going to put the wheel size at 4. And we're going to use this spinner to figure everything out. So we're going to look at this first one. We're looking at body color. So we're going to call this 1. Top left is 1. Then top right is 2. Bottom left is 3. Bottom right is 4. So that's what we're going to use with the spinner. So we're going to go to the spinner and click spin. And position 1 is what we're going to use. So this right here, capital G, lowercase g. So our child has a genotype. Well, I need to know. I need to write down the genotype. I want to write down the genotype as well. So I'm going to put down the genotype here. So if the genotype is heterozygous, we know that the phenotype is going to be the dominant trait. And so the dominant is green. So it's going to be a dominant color. And the probability of that phenotype was 100%. There was no way for there to be any other children except for green children. So 100%. All right, for the neck. So there's no chance for anything. I really didn't need to do the spinner for body color either because there wasn't any chance for anything but. So that was silly of me. Don't need to do anything here either. It has to be lowercase n, lowercase n. So lowercase n, lowercase n. So that phenotype is going to be short neck. And that again was 100% probability. All right, this one we do need to spin because we have a couple different options. So spin away. 3. Spot number 3. So that's right here. So capital T, lowercase t, big T, little t. Big T, little t. So that means that it's going to have a long tail. Now, the probability of the tail being short was only 25%. It was 75% long and 25% short because it was 2 heterozygous traits being crossed. So 75% probability of having that phenotype. All right, the eyes. We got a couple choices here, so we need the spinner. All right, let's spin. Position 2. So that's going to be right here, the heterozygous, big E, little e. So big E, little e. So that would be red eyes. Probability of that, we had 50% because there's 50 white and 50 black, half and half. So the probability of getting red eyes was 50%. Wings, we have no choices here. There's no need to use the spinner. So red wings are what we're going to get. Oh, wait a minute. Something's not right. Oh, yeah, no, that is right. All right, so we're getting red wings, and we had no choice. Only heterozygous was the answer. Okay, next one is the horn. We do have some choices here, so we're going to spin. Position 3. So that's right here. So that's going to be heterozygous again. H little h. And that means it will have a horn. And the probability of it having a horn was 75%. So there's 3 of them that have the capital H in it. So that means the 75% chance of having a horn. All right, tail spike. Tail spike, we do have options, so we need to spin. Position 1. So that's, again, the heterozygous, capital S, lowercase s. I think that means it does have a spike, but let's check. Yes, it does have a tail spike. And the probability of that was 50%. Half of them had tail spikes, and half of them did not. All right, claws. Claws, we do have options, so we need to spin. And it's landed on 1. All right, position 1 for claws is capital C, capital C. So it's homozygous for claws. I'm pretty sure that means it has 3 claws is what that means. 3 claws. And the probability of getting 3 claws was 75%. All right, fire breathing. Oh, I hope we get a fire breather. It's so sad when they're not. We got to spin. We've got a 50% chance here. Oh, please let it happen. 3. No, darn, it's not a fire breather. That's sad. No fire. And we had a 50% chance. All right, let's see if we've got a boy or a girl. And that means we can also name it. Position 1. And position 1 is a girl. So, female. And that was 50% chance. And so we are going to name her Zorna. Zorna is her name. So now we need to make her. So all the body parts are down here on slide 5. So you're going to use the body parts from here and drag them up into slide 2 to put together your dragon. So my dragon happens to look like this because this is what my spinner told me. Your dragon is going to look different, hopefully, maybe, sort of, at least a little bit, because you're going to use the spinner as well and hopefully get some different answers. So we've got, now the things that should be the same though are the ones that are 100%. The ones that say 100%, you aren't going to have any options. So you should have a green body, a short neck, and red wings because those are not options. The other ones, you have some probability of getting something different. So who knows? So I need green body and I need short neck and long tail. So I'm going to go here and get the green body. Oh, I guess the best thing to do is copy it. Yeah. All right. Green body. And short neck. Close enough. And long tail. Oh, I guess I should move this. Long tail, real long. Goodness. Okay, so note to self, especially if you get the long tail, you gotta bring her in. All right, let's see what's next. Eyes are red, so gotta get the red eye. Can't have lucked out and gotten the one that it comes in there, right? And bring in our red eye. Okay, and red wings. And she does have a horn. And she does have a tail spike. And she's got 3 claws. We're moving now. And she does not have fire, so we don't have to get that. And she's a girl, and we've labeled that. So we're all set. There she is, Zorna, the offspring of Xena and Zorus. So we're all done. I'm kind of sad. Yeah, this is it. The last day of school is this Wednesday, May 20th. So this will be the last lesson that I post and the last video that I make. As far as I know, unless things change. I mean, shoot, I might make some glass bead making videos or some more ukulele videos or a makeup tutorial this summer. Who knows? But it's the last ones that I'm required to make, I guess I should say. I'm really sad at the way the school year ended. Made good decisions. I love you guys. Make sure you come back and see me. Ooh, Miss Harris is a puddle. Seriously, I'm really sorry that y'all's year ended this way. And then you're off to the high school, and I probably won't see half of you again. So it really makes me sad. So I really do hope that when things open back up and get back to normal, that you'll come back and say hi. Okay, love you guys.